Institute of Technology, National Institute of Technology, and Warmadewa University as the co-organizer. We are also pleased to announce that this conference is sponsored by Indonesian Institute of Architects, or what we all know by Ikatan Arsitek Indonesia Jawa Timur. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, I will invite our two great speakers of this afternoon session, which are Dr. Kaifan Karimi and also Ms. Wiwi Dwi Susanti. This session will be led by the moderator, and I will invite also Ms. Fairuz Mutia as the moderator of this plenary session to lead the session. Ms. Fairuz, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mrs. Iza, for introducing me. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Honorable Dr. Kaifan Karimi from University of College London, Honorable Mrs. Wiwi Dwi Susanti from UPN Veteran Jawa Timur, dear all participants, good morning and good afternoon to all of us. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Fairuz Mutia and I will be moderating the next plenary session. I'm delighted to see you here and welcome all of you to Architecture and Design International Conference 2021. The next session, we will talking a lot about place and spatial form. The diversity of space, place, and also spatial form regarding our theme today is digested in various kind of perspectives. We welcome our two keynote speakers today, Dr. Kaifan Karimi and Wiwi Dwi Susanti, ST.MD. Before the presentation starts, let me tell you how the sessions will go. First, Mr. Kaifan will be presenting his materials, followed by Mrs. Wiwi. After that, there will be a discussion, followed by conclusions. Feel free to inquire questions by click the reaction button and raise your hand to deliver in speech. If you prefer to write it down, please do write in the following manner in the chat box. Well, our first speaker this afternoon is Dr. Kaifan Karimi from University of College London. Dr. Kaifan Karimi is an associate professor within the Space Syntax Laboratory at the Bartlett School of Architecture, University of College London, and the director of MSc/MRes programs in Space Syntax, Architecture and Cities. He is also a director of Space Syntax Limited, a UCL knowledge transfer company that utilizes the UCL and in-house research in providing professional urban and architectural design consultancy. Kaifan is an architectural and urban designer with more than 25 years of academic and professional experience. Kaifan has tried to craft a unique ability to bridge between two worlds, enriching his teaching by real-life experiences and strengthening his consultancy work by engaging in extensive academic research and teaching. Right now, he will deliver a paper harnessing the power of spatial networks, smart methodologies for unsmart cities. Mr. Kaifan, would you deliver it by yourself, or you would like us to play your videos?
No, I would like to give it live, if possible. Can you hear me very well?
Yeah, your voice is clear enough. Okay, Mr. Kaifan, the floor is yours.
Okay, let me share my screen and...
Sure.
It seems that I have a problem to share my screen. I don't know what. Okay, that's fine now. I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, you can see it.
Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Okay, it's my pleasure to to be here and give you this lecture, which I titled Harnessing the Power of Special Networks, Smart Methodologies for Unsmart Cities. I'm going to explain a little bit more, so it will become more clear as we proceed. As you mentioned, I'm an associate professor at University College London. The background is a room in our School of Architecture, and I'm also director of Space Syntax Limited, a knowledge transfer company. This is an interesting. I hope you can see my second slide, which is a process of knowledge transfer and co-creation. So there is a very interesting structure. I do a lot of academic activity at UCL, teaching and research. We are running 2 master's program and a PhD program called Space Syntax Architecture and Cities. But I also I'm involved in strategic consulting and technology development at Space Syntax Limited, and this the flow of ideas, questions, human resources, methodologies, and data between these 2 entities is a very, very interesting setup, and I feel I'm very lucky to be in such a position. Space syntax field of research is quite a established network of academics and professionals who use these methods and tools, techniques for academic research and consultancy. These are the people that I know across the world, but there are more people, and I feel that I should put more dots on Indonesia. So hopefully you can inform me who is using space syntax, and I can update this map. But the point is that it is a very established domain of research. And in the past 30, 40 years, it's been impacting and initiating the important debates in architecture and urban design, urban planning, things such as connectivity, spatial accessibility, permeability, intelligibility, wayfinding, and so on. Which, some time ago, they were quite new and a bit challenging and kind of niche debates, but now they are all mainstream discussions, and you can come across them everywhere. This approach also has influenced policies and guidelines across the world, particularly in the UK. All these, guidelines, compendiums, and manuals, and so on. They have been influenced by this type of research, and also design. We've been quite active in the field of urban design and architecture. This is a good example of it. The Old Market Square in Nottingham, an award-winning project which has been praised, and all of that was influenced heavily by the analytical work that we have done in collaboration with the designers, landscape designers, and the output is quite an interesting project, which is working very well. It's also, there's a bit of the delay in changing slides. My apologies, but I try to fix it. No, it's not working. So strategic urban thinking. So the research is applied to larger scale urban and regional projects. In this case, this is a project to turn all the raised railways, abandoned railways in London into a network of cyclists and connect it with the street network. What I really like about this platform of research and analytical work is that it connects very nicely, very strongly with other disciplines such as social sciences, transport studies, architecture, planning, environmental studies, and economics. So you know, if you think that syntax is about spatial network, access, layout, and people's behavior and activities, right in the middle, it connects very nicely with other disciplines, and not only connects with them, the other disciplines can connect through us, which is another interesting proposition, another interesting opportunity for further collaboration between different disciplines. Now, today I would like to talk a little bit about what I think is smart methodologies. I mean, you've heard about the concept of smart cities and let's do this and that and technology and, you know, everything that. Hello. Can you hear me well?
Yes, please continue.
Okay. So yes, I mean, what is smart in my view is a little bit different from what people think. This is an amazing photo. It's a real photo. It's not a collage taken by photographer Tuca Vieira from a part of Sao Paulo in Brazil. And you see this stark contrast between two types of urbanity. On the right, you have this high-tech, high-level, you know, very expensive luxury development, and on the left, you have an informal settlement, an unplanned settlement. They are very different from each other, but it doesn't mean that one of them is smart and the other one is unsmart. There are positives in both of them that they can learn. But what is really unsmart about this situation is the lack of correspondence between these two parts of the city. Basically, they put a wall and they are you know, separating different parts of the city from each other. And that is not really smart in my view. I'm really struggling. I keep receiving this these messages to admit people, and it kind of blocks my yes. Now, again, what is smart and what is not smart? On the left, you have city of Shibam in Yemen. It's been there for hundreds of years, thousands of years, in fact, and it's worked very well and adaptable with the climate, with the social interactions, you know, local materials and everything. And on the right, you have sort of development that you see everywhere. I'm sure you have it in Indonesia as well. And people think they are state of the art and they are very smart and everything. But what we will tell us about these developments in 100 years or 200 years or 1700 years, I'm sure it you know, the time will tell. But there are indications that they are not really smart. They have deficiencies that you can detect right now, let alone in hundreds of years. Now, space syntax debate started from this question: if there is a relationship between how we put the space together, how we design cities and buildings, and what is happening in them, and if it can create social problems or social benefits. So the very kind of you know, early books of space syntax written by people like Bill Hillier and Julian Hansen, they developed a social theory of a space, if you like, or a spatial theory of society. You know, how space and society are interconnected and interrelated, as one paradigm. This is a very, very important part of this argument. Now you can go and read the books and hundreds of papers, but I give you a very simple definition of space syntax to remember. And this is, I mean, this is the way Bill Hillier would have explained space syntax. So there are two very fundamental propositions here, very commonsensical, very fundamental. The first one is that space is intrinsic to human activities, and it's not background to it. Basically, you consider space or built environment and people or society as one thing. So the way we shape space reflects in it, and by doing so, the space we make becomes humanized. We humanize the spaces by shaping them. This is one. The second one is that space is fundamentally, categorically, a configurational entity. And configuration is actually a pattern of relationship between different components of a system. So again, very commonsensical. If you think about, say, your building, where you are, there are seminar rooms, there are hallways, staircases and entrances. These are different components of space that are connected to each other in a particular way. If you change that particular way, you get a different results, a different dynamics, and a different relationship with human activities. So these two, I mean, you can always challenge them, but in my view, they are very basic and quite commonsensical. I've rarely seen anyone to challenge these concepts. But that's it. I mean, based on these, we can develop a field of research, a theory which is based on space and configuration, and it provides the right tool for thinking and enables us to connect people and space. And the strange thing is this such a commonsensical thing had not been really developed into a theory until 1970s or 1980s. That's one of these strange things. And this enhanced theory of people and space can enable us to develop analytical methods. This is really interesting, and models to investigate spatial design and, in fact, human interaction. So we are moving from a theory to methodology to tools that can enable us to understand our cities much better. Now, cities are a large collection of buildings, of course, connected by a network of spaces. This is universal, everywhere you can find it. And this network is the largest thing, it's the thing, actually. The city is the network. And it has a structure which is about a geometry, how things are geometrically planned, but it has also a topology, which is about configuration, how things are linked to each other regardless of their geometry. Now, analysis of network of spaces, this major network, which is also the movement, the network of movement and connectivity between everything to everything, using configurational and metric properties of the network, offers a very powerful, a very analytical tool for understanding urban systems. And in that way, we can have a very, if you like, integrated approach to building cities. Now, this is what I call harnessing the power of networks. The network is there, it's very powerful. We need just to use it and harness it. Space syntax models are relatively easy to build. There are components such as lines of sight and movement, convex spaces where you can see anything from anywhere, fields of vision or agents that mimic human behavior. And then by using these very simple components, you can really connect the built fabric, the physical side of the city, if you like, location, physical space, to human side of it, which is behavior, cognition, wayfinding. So these models bring these two things together. And this is the powerful thing about them. So it's not about morphology. It's about morphology and people. It's about space and people. So this is one example of this. You know, in somewhere in central London, you drive a network of lines through the system, you take it out, you use graph analysis to do various type of analysis and come up with measures. In this case it's called integration or betweenness centrality. And the red lines are the most connected ones. The blue lines are the least connected ones. In that way, you see suddenly the structure of this fabric, and if you bring back the analysis to this fabric, you can read it better, you can understand it better, and perhaps think that okay, the red lines they have more movement, more activities, higher densities, or certain land uses that are more suitable for that kind of movement, such as retail and commercial activities. Whereas, you know, the sort of blue lines, they're more suitable for, say, residential or small offices and that sort of thing. So it really, even if you don't know anything about this part of city in London, suddenly you have an amazing amount of information that can enable you really to understand the system much better. Now, the beauty of this is that it's universally applicable. All cities have urban networks, all cities have movement networks. And then you can say, compare a old city in the Middle East, modeled as it was 300 years ago, with a modern city in America, which is modeled as it is now, and use the same principles to read the analysis and compare them together. Another advantage of this type of approach is the scalability of the analysis. So you can look at the whole system. On the left, this is London, and then you can see, you know, these red lines are the main routes, main thoroughfares, and then secondary ones and tertiary ones. But then you can zoom in and change the scale of analysis, and then you kind of reveal these local centers, which used to be villages. You know, we call them London villages, and these two, and any scale between them, enables you really to understand the city in various ways. We constantly find that the spatial structures, they correlate with other activities, movement in particular, and you can explore it if you measure movement, the flows of people, for instance, compared against the spatial accessibility, you find a very high correlation. In this case, it's 77%, meaning that if you have this model and you don't have this one, you can really predict the flows of people. And if you change the model, you change the design, you can predict what would happen if you create these changes. So it becomes a tool for design and intervention. The model also strongly correlates with things such as land use, land values, densities, and patterns of crime. And this type of correlation is very important for us because we could use the model very efficiently to look at various social phenomena. Now, what is the real smart? This is my definition of sustainable smart city. This is a system in which the spatial structure and movement structure and land use structure, density, human interaction, and other layers, they harmonize, they are coordinated with each other, they follow each other basically. And then you create a very enduring, very sustainable system which functions very well and can live for a very long time without wasting resources and everything. And by any means, it's a livable and interesting place to live in. So we can use the methodology that I introduced on different scales, from very micro scale to very macro scale, which is a small to large, and it could be from architectural scale to urban and extra urban, and it's all possible. This is amazing. And you can also look at different modes of movement, from slow to medium to fast, which is pedestrian, cycling, vehicular, again, using the same model. And in this way, you can look at literally projects or studies that go from the scale of a room to a scale of a country, yes, and anything in between, and various type of projects depending on what you're doing, research or consultancy or other things. You can apply the methodologies. So today I'm focusing more on urban strategies because we don't have time. I could have shown you a lot of examples from micro to macro, but today I talk a little bit more about the macro scale. And we start normally in this kind of smart planning, we start with analysis of spatial network. And as I showed you, this is Chicago, for instance. You create this network of lines, you analyze it, and then suddenly you have an amazing understanding. Just notice how the red lines, they match the city center, the downtown, if you like, in American terminology. You could also model an entire city. Jeddah in Saudi Arabia, in this case, on the left is existing model, and the plan proposed by planners for the city, and then compare them and measure the impact of our plans on the existing city. And in this way, we understand the strengths and weaknesses of our plan. We can change the plan, we can test it again, and then see the impact, and do this until we get the best results. You can look at different types of urban formation. In this case, for instance, informal settlements or unplanned settlements. And if you want to regenerate them or enhance them by this type of modeling on a citywide scale or local scale or anything in between, to see how these areas are formed and how they work with their surroundings and with the rest of the city. This is very fundamental. And consistently, we find that these areas, they have poor internal structure, which is poorly connected to the surrounding and poorly connected to the rest of the city. These are isolated places spatially, which leads to social segregation and all the problems that you find. I'm sure, and this is a phenomenon that you can see from East Asia to West America. It is a universal phenomenon. But now, can we try to stitch together these internal layouts, connect them to the surrounding and to the rest of the city? So create a base for further work. I mean, I have nothing against participatory approaches, consultation, and so on. You have to bring people into this. But in order to do that, you really need to understand the system in a way that you can explain it to people and to other experts, and develop different design scenarios, which can go from very interventionist kind of development to a very kind of sensitive, public-led, community-assisted improvement based on evidence, based on analysis. And you can use this to consult people or to make decisions. For instance, if I have a little bit of budget, where should I spend it to maximize the benefit of this budget? Sometimes I say, what if I have a bucket of paint and I want to paint a wall? Where that wall should be? Is it here? Is it there? Is it in the center? So we need that kind of methodology, if you like, smart methodologies, really to help us to deal with these unsmart systems. And then it can go to the level of really a country. This is United Arab Emirates, the model of the entire country. And then you can see the interaction between different cities. We created this model, an amazing model of the entire UK. I don't have time to show you, but you can just Google it. Space Syntax Open Mapping, the link is there. And then you get to a website that you can see the entire country, the analysis, zoom in, zoom out, and then use different measures. Say if you are sitting in a village somewhere north of England and you want to see how your village works locally or globally in relationship with the other areas, you can zoom in and see it. This is a really interesting resource, and we can really develop it for other parts of the world hopefully for the entire world. But is it enough, only this spatial model? Increasingly, we realize that the spatial models are very powerful, but we need to integrate them with other types of data and build what we call integrated model. For instance, public transport network can be linked with the spatial network model, with the street model, and that's a more advanced model. Or you bring land use density and other things into your model and build a model that could be weighted by each of these parameters or by all of them. And this is a different way. I mean, I don't advise always a sophisticated, complex model like this, but whenever you have to build it, you have to build it. And it was used in a project such as this, Masdar in Abu Dhabi. With Foster and partners, we try to optimize the plan, or the strategic planning in Jeddah. I showed you some examples. In later stages of the project, we moved on to develop an integrated urban model and answer so many questions. I mean, other than the spatial structure, you could look at, where the centers are, how many centers are within 15 minutes of all residents, and so many other questions that are asked by the planners or by stakeholders. And these integrated models help you really to answer those questions. The other thing is measuring the impact of mega projects, large scale developments. And so what will happen if I put a development here, a development there, to the surroundings or to the rest of the city? Can we measure it? Can we predict the impact? That would be really interesting. Or can we study the relationship between car dependence and social isolation, for instance? If I don't have a car, am I socially disadvantaged? And if this is the case, can we enhance the public transportation to help people? Similarly, access to health services such as clinics and GPs and so on, and indices of multiple deprivation. You consistently find that lack of access to services means more deprivation. So we can really explore these things via these integrated models. The relationship between health and urban form in various ways. You find some really interesting results. Look at this. Adult obesity correlates strongly with average number of different land uses. So if you live in a mixed use area, you're less likely to be obese. That's very interesting, right? But if you live in a monofunctional area, you are more likely to be overweight or obese. Then, I mean, these methods are very difficult to use. You need some expertise, but if needed, you can develop these online tools. This is one of the examples, Urban Data Explorer. You can put everything on a database and create an interface that everybody can use it, the decision makers in particular, but the people as well. And they can look at different metrics and so on. You could use also these models to assist the regional planning or larger scale planning, testing scenarios, working with various disciplines and collaborate. So this is what I wanted to say. I'm sorry, I had to be very, very quick. I wanted to stick with that 30 minutes that you've given me. I have 2 minutes, and in these 2 minutes, I just give you a little bit of information about a space syntax laboratory. You can again Google it, but the links are there. You can see what we're doing there in terms of research and academic activities. This is the program, the master's program that we are running, MSc, MRes, Space Syntax and Architecture and Cities at UCL. There is a really useful website called spacesyntax.net, and it gives you a lot of information about academic development, commercial applications, symposiums, software, and everything else. And then finally, for those of you who are really interested and don't have access to our teaching, and you find it difficult to learn it, by yourself through books and papers, we have created this Space Syntax online training platform. And this is very, very helpful because it gives you a very fast and easy way of getting into this field of research. Again, you can Google it, Space Syntax online training platform, and the link is there. That's all I wanted to talk about. I know that we have another session for questions and discussions, so I'll be very glad to be with you in that session. Thank you very much. I think you're on mute.
Okay. Sorry. Could we have a technical issue? Nggak bisa, Pak. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry for the inconvenience. Thank you, Dr. Kaifian. Please hold your questions. We will continue to next keynote speaker, Mrs. Wiwi Dwi Susanti. Okay. Okay. Is my voice clear enough? Okay, thank you. Let me introduce Mrs. Wiwi Dwi Susanti as our second keynote speaker today. She is the head laboratory of regional and architecture design in UPN Veteran Jawa Timur. She was graduated from Brawijaya University at 2010 and continued her master degree at Institut Teknologi Bandung in architectural history and theory major. She is mainly teaching history, behavioral architecture, also theory and methods. Her main research are focusing in value of local wisdom, semantics, space and place attachment, moreover, meanings. She will deliver material entitled Social Space in Resilience Discourse. And Mrs. Wiwi, the floor is yours.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Can you hear my voice?
Yes, it's clear enough.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon, everybody. I would like to thank Ms. Fairuz Mutia for time and introduction, and also I would like to thank all the committee for this invitation. In this afternoon, I will present of my study about resilient and social space. My presentation.
Could the host please help Mrs. Wiwi for presenting her materials?
I will present by myself. Okay. Can you see my presentation? Okay. Yeah. The title of my study is Social Space in Resilience Discourse. And for the introduction in this presentation, I will explain two theories about resilience with social space. I will explain the connection between resilience and social space in thematic kampung. This title was chosen Because basically we live always to as a process of resilience. The urban kampung is one of the city products whose existence has begun to be marginalized. Many social problems are found there so that the character of the space tends to be heterogeneous. Similar to the city, urban kampung also want to show their existence, which is part of the resilience process. One of the efforts to maintain the existence of urban kampung is become thematic kampung because that are in great interest by tourists, government, and investors. After becoming the thematic kampung, it does not mean that the urban kampung has been able to survive from the dynamic of urban development. But the urban kampung is still struggling to be able to show the original character which has started to disappear through the influence of the government and also the capital. Okay, in the social space, I will be explain about the concept of space, social space, and kampung as social space. As we know that the development of the concept of space is very diverse, starting from viewing space as a physical object only and also space as something that is not real. Just like Rene describes the state that space are tend to be understood in terms of its concentrate material formation, or space something that real we can touch and we can call as a tangible space. Different from the Rene Descartes, Levib, as a philosopher from France, seeing space as something abstract and has relation with something that is real. Space is not only container, but space is something that produces. Levib states that space is not a thing, but rather a set of relation between things, or we can call as intangible space. And social space, Henry Levib also states that the emergence of space cannot be separated from social life. Human as social beings who always need other people to interact with others. In the process of interaction, humans have a social space. Human needs a social environment for survival. Kampung as social space. Just like Silas and Budi Harjo in 2009 state that kampung is collection of houses should not only be seen as a physical aspect or quantitatively, it should also be viewed from the qualitative side more broadly and in depth. So this qualitative aspect will be produced the social space. Qualitative values such as harmony and relying on mutual cooperation, or in Indonesia we say like gotong royong. This qualitative value become the power of society in production social space. And also the qualitative value become an important part in maintaining the existence of urban kampung. If we're talking about space, we'll talk about the community or society. Social space is shaped by social action, both individually or collectively. It is social action that give meaning to how a spatial space is conceived by those who feel and animate that space. Social action is a step of qualitative aspect that must be maintained in the community in the urban kampung. Next, for the resilience topic, I will explain about resilience itself, and then resilience can be implemented when we realize the spatial process, and then the last city development is seen in the resilience context. Resilience, according to Simonson, resilience is the capacity of a system, can be individual, a forest, a city, or an economy to deal with the change and continue to develop. Related to architecture and resilience issues are often associated with ecological issues like natural disaster, and natural damage, and so on. In fact, if we look closely, resilience from social problem is more commonly found in big cities than resilience related to ecology. So we have to better understand the problem of social resilience because it will continue to grow along with the development of the city. Relations and social space. Relations and social space. So in the relation state, social space play an important role. The apparent social space is the representation of personal space that has the power to determine resilience strategies. Community is one of the spaces that create the hierarchy of the resilience system. Community has important role in resilience, and resilience began with the individual level, continuing with group or family, organization and institution, community, and finishing with the level of society as a whole. Feeling of safety is among the most essential primary human needs, so that only society resilience will be achieved. So that individually resistance must be strong, then a strong society will be safe. Individual resilience starts from the theory of personal space. Personal space is one of the basic defense efforts of individual. When people feel comfortable, then the bubbles will open and shape a community. So that personally, individual resilience is said it will affect the quality of community resilience. Community that have been formed a social space will be safe as resilient space. Just like the following picture is a relations process diagram. Relations begin with the individual process, then develop into community. Resilience can be achieved when individual and community resilience can be realized. During this adaptation process, there are several influences from the environment, government, city policy, investor, and also culture. This influence will affect the process of adaptation and transformation. Sometimes it is the influence, government, capitalist culture, and so on. That's all put pressure on the resilience process. Just like Leavitt stated that the space is a political product and an instrument for social economic change, so that space is not a natural and passive. Space as political product is sold in spatial planning practice that are never free from the allegement of actors who make spatial regulation. The naturality of the actor in exercising their power is reflected in the policy made by the regulator or government. Spatial planning practice include the production and reproduction of space in which there is a struggle from the classes to accurate and control that space. So that space is not longer natural space because space is always produced and we have much work for. And this is the community strategy in carrying out the resilience process. Humans are social beings who cannot be separated from social life, especially Indonesian people have a tradition of gathering. The identity unique of a society replenish history, ability, effort, struggles, and individual body and soul. Like Leavitt stated that the character of its community is called the use value, or according to Johnson in 1998, stated that character of identity is important to become the attraction of a place. So when we understand the identity of community, the process of resilience will develop that identity instead of eliminating or erasing that identity. Without being influenced by the government or capitalists, we develop more toward profit. When capitalists and government enter the process, the direction of resilience will change. Like the picture below, it is explained that when we determine the character of society in circle shape, the resilience shape must be in circle shape also, just like this, not a square. It is the government, environment, and the capitalists who turn it into square place. Spatial conflict. Spatial conflict happen when the meaning of space is understood differently by the interpreting group. Capitalists and the government as quantity value, or we can call abstract space, into social space as qualitative value in everyday life or local space. Quantitative value are considered important by capitalists because they see space as a place to produce money. So the identity of a society must be clear, so that capitalists and the government do not take full control of the direction of resilience. Because at this time, in urban kampung, abstract place dominated more than local space. When abstract and local space meet, it will become ambiguous space, just like this picture. Okay, and my study in thematic kampung in Malang City, Indonesia. As we know that Malang City is one of the second largest city in East Java province. If we see from the geographical aspect, Malang City is surrounded by several mountains with fertile soil condition. That rapid development that occur in the Malang City today finally making have many special nicknames, such as Paris One Java, Flower City, Education City, Historical City, and so on. The development of the Malang City into a tourist city began in 2015. One of the leading tourist attractions in Malang is the thematic kampung. On progress, there are about 11 thematic kampung at this time. Joripan district is one area that has many thematic kampungs such as 3D kampung, warna-warni kampung, or colorful kampung, blue kampung or Arema kampung, and also lantern kampung. And the following picture is the distribution of thematic kampung in Malang City. There are 11 thematic kampung and they are still growing. It is a white kampung or kampung putih, keramat kampung, and then kampung sejarah Tawangsari or history kampung, biru kampung or Arema kampung, 3G kampung or kampung green, and then we have kampung payung or umbrella kampung, 3D kampung, and then warna-warni kampung or colorful kampung, cultural kampung in Polo Wijen or kampung budaya, and then 100 marks kampung, and then the last study kampung. This is the various and kind of the thematic kampung in Malang City. And the development of the Malang City into tourist city is balanced with the availability of facilities and infrastructure. Starting with many hotel and guest house development, we started from 2050 until now. Okay. Thematic kampung, spatial practice in Malang City, and the case study in 3D kampung and warna-warni kampung or colorful kampung.
Before transformation into a thematic kampung, the Jodipan was identical to the character of the urban kampung, an urban area that has specific function, symbol, and entities which provide an overview of the historical character, social, culture, and economy. The function symbol of the urban kampung are part of the urban kampung process to survive. In the face of uncertainty, which can be seen from its activity pattern, like Jamanik state in 2016. Kampung in Jodipan area was originally a kampung with a negative image because there were many negative behavior carried out by the society. Kampung Jodipan area is inhabited by two races, Javanese and Madures. And today the negative image is erased with the positive image that we saw of the resilience. The expansion of thematic kampung is driven by the dynamic of the Malang city as a tourism city. Thematic kampung continue to evolve until now, initially 6 and then delving into 11 kampung and still going. The development is part of the resilience process. And this is the condition after becoming a thematic kampung. After turning into a tourist area, a new identity as 3D kampung and warna-warni kampung more emphasized than the actual kampung name. We can see the logo of identity of thematic kampung are shown in every place. It's like this. Thematic kampung are become an attraction in the Jodipan area, especially if we see from the main street, Branta Street, 3D and warna-warni kampung is good for picture background, just like this. So many visitors use this spot for photography activity. Meanwhile, the non-physical identity that was originally this kampung is identical to the negative area because of the behavior of the society. No, it is a mainstay tourist kampung in Malang City. Representation of space. Many new space created for visitors. So colorful every side of space are painting with the 3D image so visitor can be utilized for photography activity. We can see also that early is dominated with the visitor parking area. So it's very difficult walking in that area. So much logo, thematic kampung to show the identity of space and replace the original identity as urban kampung, like this. Public space is built for visitors, like gazebo, gardu pandang, and so on. Public space is increasingly restricted because many are intimidated by visitors. In addition to creating a new identity, thematic kampung also create a shift in the meaning of space. Color is a sign used to identify space. Space is no longer identified using a boundary, fence, or door. So the space has been given a color or image. Then the boundary, fence, or door is considered not exist. Visitor can freely access the area. The concept of private and public space replaced by color. The narrow alley that used to store personal items has now turned into a public place because there are colors and images on the wall, so that the visitors are allowed to go to the place. The slope area to be unused is now a suitable area for viewing posts for visitors or gadu pandang. The riverside area was originally a service area, but is now public area and is one of the favorite spots for visitors to take pictures. It's like this. Color is a code or sign used by visitor as space boundary, so that it's no longer restricted by physical element but with color. Kampung thematic also create clustering and unite system. Clustering system appear where they are making border in every thematic kampung. Identity become important to marking the border. Besides that, ticket seller are the border. If we enter the thematic kampung, border not always offense, but the activity that arise also can call as a border. Glass bridge that connection the 3D kampung to warna-warni kampung has function as border that separated the two kampung. This glass bridge. This border, we can find the ticket seller in front glass bridge before we enter the glass bridge. This border make this thematic kampung more exclusive because if we want enter, we must book the ticket. This concept is different with urban kampung before. Become thematic kampung, all people are allowed to enter or inclusive. And unite system understand as intangible aspect. Since Jodipan area is known as tourist area, because all of the Jodipan area are full with color and become new identity. Heterogenism into homogenism. The concept of homogenism is influenced by the modernism. Homogenism is spread from the concept of a tourist kampung that emphasizes visual beauty or only physical aspect, so that the longer it will erase the character of the urban kampung, which is identical with heterogeneity. The visual character of the blue kampung, warna-warni kampung, 3D kampung, and white kampung have similarities. Initially, heterogenism become homogenism. This change in character also has an impact on tourist visitation, so that the blue kampung and white kampung are less visited by tourists because they have the same character as the 3D kampung and warna-warni kampung. This kind of thematic kampung that use visual aesthetic color to attract tourists have similarity with thematic kampung in Indonesia. In Malang City, in Surabaya City, and also around the world. Spatial conflict. Spatial conflict are created because of difference in the meaning of space. The tourist space has rules that discipline and force people to submit the new habit. The relationship between society and its living space in the end, it's controlled by industrial mechanism with capitalist logic. And also the rule of tourism space can produce the conflict space. The rules of this tourism space are made to bring benefit to the community, capitalists, and the government from the quantitative aspect. But if studied from the qualitative aspect, the condition of the community will be increasing marginalized. The tourist spatial regulation might have impact the fiction of the space meaning private and public space and become an ambiguous space. The availability of public space is getting less due to tourism activities. Change in people way thinking in beautify kampung in the past. The kampung was beautified in order to utilize by residents. But now beautified is to bring in more visitors. This picture says that ambiguous space created because they are combination between abstract space and local space. Just like mother gathering just to make a craft that will sold to a visitor. Everyday life of mother has also changed, all oriented toward a profit, not mutual corporation. The thematic kampung as a social space will continue to develop and very, very dynamic so that the production process and production space will continue to exist in the thematic kampung. Space is produced by visitor, and visitor also produce space. The conclusion from my study is urban kampung experiencing resilience is one of the efforts to be able to show its existence. Urban kampung that are rich in local value as they turn into thematic kampung have undergone many changes in terms of physical and non-physical aspects. This change is not only influenced by the development of the Malang city into tourism, but is also influenced by many things, such as interested of the governmental city policy and also the capital that has influence on improving the visual quality of the kampung. At this time, the thematic kampung might be considered appropriate in order to support the Malang city as tourist city, but impossible to predict what will happen in the future. As Vivek said, that live space is a space where life takes place. They are value of struggle to continue or give meaning to life. City is very dynamic, so must also be balanced with the resilience of the urban kampung. So that the urban kampung must be continue to fight for value, to continue and give meaning to life. And according to Soja, state that church place. Okay, my presentation is finished. Thank you. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Thank you, Mrs. Wimi, for the inspiring session. Let's give a big applause to Mrs. Wimi. Okay, we will start the question and answer sessions, the discussions. Sorry. Okay, I think there are many questions already in the chat box, but we only have 30 minutes in this discussion session, so probably I'm sorry if maybe not all of the questions will be answered. It's a very tight time, actually. Okay, the first questions to Dr. Kaivan. Can space syntax can be used to predict the next spread of the cities or the density of population?
Yes, I hope you can hear me well.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Well, I just looked at the questions. They're quite interesting, very intelligent questions. And I'll try my best to answer all of them. There's a bit of reflection. I can hear my voice.
Yeah, it's quite clear now.
Okay, so I hope you can hear me well. So the first question is about the spread of cities or density of population in future. I would say to a certain extent we can predict it, but it depends. Let me explain something. The tools and methods that I presented, they are iterative methods. So you develop something, you analyze it, you understand it, you change it, then you analyze it again and see what you have done, and then keep doing this in terms of design or planning, right? So space syntax methods are not generative methods. You just don't push a button and get a city. That's not how it works. It's a tool for thinking and assessing your thoughts, basically. You can use or link it with generative methods, but again, you have to bring that assessment phase, the analytical phase that would test your ideas, your design, and then measure it or determine the impact. Now, in terms of growing cities, it depends how it grows. I mean, sometimes it's planned, and many cities now, they have master plans. I'm sure in Indonesia, you at least have some sort of plans for cities. So for those ones, yes, I mean, we can model them in different ways and try to see, how the city, I think I showed you one of the examples of city of Jeddah as it is now and as the planners planned, and then we can look at it and predict, various aspects of it. But if by predicting the future of the city, you mean, exactly what will happen in future, it depends. I mean, sometimes we have a plan, but the plans are not implemented, or people do other things. And these informal settlements that we discussed, and Mrs. Sunanti also elaborated on the cases in Indonesia, are the cases. I mean, they're growing everywhere, and you have no control over them. Can we predict them? Yes. I mean, if you look at the growth of a city in the past 100 years, for instance, or 50 years, and see where these things are appearing and how they appear, so they have a tool really to predict where the next ones will be. You can apply them and see what happens, and so on. So in a way, yes, but it's not a tool for full prediction.
The questions from Tiara, UPN Veteran Jawa Timur. Maybe you've already stated a little about it. If space index can be used as a method design for developing the empty space, such as to design a new city, or not?
Yes, I think I mentioned a little bit about it. The answer is yes. But again, it's not a generative process or fully generative process. You don't design with these methods. You design, and then you use analysis to measure your design. Now, how you generate that design, it depends. I mean, sometimes you use an analytical methodology or even an abstract methodology to generate your design. The case of Mazda that I showed you is a good example. It's a city from scratch. The architects, they won a competition using some forms that were attractive and everything. But then when they wanted to develop it further, they realized that their plan wasn't really a good plan, because there were so many problems with it. So we analyzed the plan and said, look, this is not going to work, basically, from what we know about cities. And the question was how we can fix it. So you change the design, you shift things around, spatial structure, densities, land uses, architecture, prominent architecture, and everything. And then you measure it again, and then do this iterative process until you get the design. And cities are like that. I mean, they keep changing, and you have to keep adapting your approach to designing cities. I hope it is clear, Tiara, but if it is not, just let me know.
Answer the questions from Tiara and also the previous questions from Mrs. Ami. Is that clear enough, Mrs. Ami?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Well, I want to read the third questions from Mrs. Adiba. I wonder how would the space is currently perceived in this pandemic era? Could a smart city, which developed with dynamic form, have the same value with digital space that are currently being replaced due to the pandemic? And how space index methodology are being used to analyze such phenomena?
Again, a very interesting question. Now, the issue is, I mean, I have to be honest with you. We are dealing with a phenomenon which is quite complex and quite unknown. We never had this before. It just, maybe it happened 100 years ago in Spanish flu, And then world went back to normal. I mean, if we want to learn from that, Spanish flu was more devastating than COVID-19, and cities went back to normal. But at that time, we didn't have this digital technology, or at least to the level that we have it now. I mean, from London now has gone back to normal. I mean, the activities are less, but it's by and large the same city. I think the processes would be the same, but in a different way. And we have to study more to see how digital communication, like the one that we are having, would impact our cities, and in which ways. So we need more studies. But my current view is that our understanding of city as a fundamental spatial network wouldn't change. What would change would be the intensity and the type of communications that we will be having. And in my view, is very, very complementary. By the way, I'm not in the university now. I'm sitting in my home because, as you can see, I'm a bit unwell. I couldn't travel to work today, so I'm giving this this presentation discussion from my own home with this nice background. It could have been a video moving, or even a direct camera installed in my building. So these things are possible, and they're becoming more and more interesting. So we have to keep an eye on it. And there are some current research on integrating digital communication, digital interaction with the spatial interactions, the integrated models, if you like. And these are the integrated models of future. So digital connectivity would be integrated with the spatial connectivity to see how the cities really perform. And the spatial connectivity is a spatial, digital connectivity is aspatial, because it doesn't matter where you are in the world, and how these two layers work with each other is something to to be researched in future. So I don't have the full answer. I have some if you like hunches that I presented. We will see how it goes. I sincerely hope that we go back to normal. And I mean, it would be really a shame if all this the creations of humanity is somehow vanished, and we are sitting in our homes and not relating with the rest of the city. Hopefully it wouldn't happen.
I do agree about that. As you know, that there are so many questions towards you, that I think I should resume it a little bit. The next question is,
would it be possible to put a couple of questions to the second speaker in case we run out of time? I think it would be fairer.
Oh, okay.
And then we come back to the question to me. Yes. Okay.
Well, I would love to maybe read another questions for Mrs. Wiwi. This is from Yusvika, Mrs. Wiwi. The more visitors who come, it will make the thematic kampung more heterogeneous, not homogeneous. Maybe you can answer.
Okay, I'll try to answer from Yusvika that the heterogeneous is related to the local value, such as mutual cooperation, everyday life value, and so on. So if heterogeneous was created by the visitor, it will erase the local value that owned by thematic kampung. We have to be aware of the hegemony what we receive. So many hegemony that we receive now. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Wiwi. Well, this is really interesting actually, because one speaker talked about the tangible side and another speakers talking about the intangible sides. It's really complementing each other. For Mrs. Vivi, I would love to read again another questions from Tiara. Do all the thematic kampung in Malang City have no local value to be optimized into thematic kampung?
Okay, next question from Tiara. I'll try to answer the question. Actually, in Malang City, thematic kampung that have so many. They are just like kampung heritage kayu tangan that optimize the potential local value such as history, architecture, and culture. So that the thematic kampung highlight the character of colonial architecture, religious tourism like Mbah Honggotom, and also shopping tour at the Krempiang traditional market, which was the initial market at the time of the formation of Talun village during the Kediri Kingdom. And also we have a Max Kampung that show the originality of the Malangan Max. This local value will become the identity of the thematic kampung that can minimize the capitalist role. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Vivi. Is it clear enough, Mrs. Yusvika? Mrs. Yusvika, really still with us, right?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
So wait for your answer.
Okay, I think it's clear enough. Well, there's so many questions towards the two keynote speakers here. I think it's really interesting. Personally, I have my own questions, but I think maybe I should set aside a little bit. Okay, let's go back to maybe Dr. Kaivan. This is from Ahmad Ilyas Arifuddin, a 7th semester student from UPN Veteran Jawa Timur. He asked, is well-planned city comes from wealth accumulation? For example, London became well-developed in 19th century from the vast amount of wealth accumulated during the Industrial Revolution. Also, Vancouver is well known for its urban planning. Is it possible to plan a great city when there's not much capital there, for example, in developing country like Indonesia?
Mm-hmm. Okay, another really intelligent question. I don't think so. I mean, the best, I mean, let's make a distinction between planned cities and organic cities, the cities that never had a plan. They just developed organically. And London is one of them, by the way. You know, there are some partial plans here and there, but in the past 2000 years, it has developed really organically. And by organic, I mean that no plan really guided the development of the city until I would say 1950, that they put together a London plan. And even that is pretty much localized. I mean, in London, for instance, the local authorities are in charge and they change it. In fact, the worst cities that I have seen are the planned cities. These are failing all over the world because of the thing that I mentioned, you know, the different layers that match each other in organic cities, and they never match in planned cities because the designers, they either don't have the knowledge or don't, you know, they prioritize different things. And you see the examples all over the world. So it's not about wealth, in my view. Okay, if you're more wealthy, you probably can create more, you know, interesting buildings or institutions or things like that. That's fine. But well-functioning cities, I mean, these kampungs that you're talking about, if you look at the original ones, some of them are really well-functioning. set aside the wealth of people. I mean, I'm sure some of them are not really rich, and it's common in the world, but they function very well. So, you know, the problem, in fact, is urban planning. The problem is if you leave the cities to grow by themselves organically, they might do better, but that might not be possible in modern world, because the growth is gigantic in some parts of the world. I'm sure in Indonesia or China or other parts. So we need some sort of plan, but we have to learn from cities, how the cities have grown in the past, and they have become sustainable, resilient structures. And by learning from them, try to design our cities or plan our cities. Yeah, obviously, if you have more resources, such as Vancouver, you can create, you know, better infrastructure, better, you know, places. But it's perfectly possible to do it in developing countries. And you know, I put the politics and other things aside. I mean, there's always this element, even in the developed countries. But yeah, I mean, it needs more knowledge, if you like, and deeper knowledge of the city culture, economy, and then try to adapt with that the urban plans. Is that okay, Ahmed? Have I answered your question?
I think it's enough. Thank you for your answer.
Okay.
Questions? I do really interested about how the organic form of the city is carried out, and especially in Indonesia, we do have a lot of it, and this is really interesting. But how about we're having a really dense and tight-knit urban fabric, Dr. Kaivan, but it's not integrated enough. So what space syntax can do or offer?
Yeah, I mean, in fact, one of the best uses of space syntax analysis is in organic cities, because it's all based on connectivity and movement. I mean, how these places they evolved is based on this physical interaction and then human interaction through the movement network. So if you understand that, and different modes of movement, of course, I mean, it used to be pedestrian in the past, and then it became more like, you know, wheeled traffic, and then eventually cars and other things. So if we understand those networks, then we can create an analysis that shows us how these cities have evolved. The difficulty is when the cities grow, if they don't adapt with the modern needs, they have problems. I mean, you see it in many places, especially historic centers and old centers. I mean, they are old and the streets are narrow, and you know, the buildings are not modern enough. So the cities have to regenerate themselves. They have to correct themselves all the time. But this correction and regeneration has to be done with a great understanding of what the city is, how it has been, and how it has changed. And in this way, we can really avoid big mistakes that have happened in the past century or so, by you know, devastating our cities with these kind of gigantic infrastructure and almost ruining the quality of life or the communities in the cities. So yes, I mean, this type of analysis can really help us to understand the issues better and respond to them better. It doesn't mean that it can resolve the problem. We have to find a solution still, but finding the solution based on knowledge and analysis is easier and more constructive, if you like, more productive. For instance, this I was fascinated by Mrs. Vivek's presentation about transformation of these compounds. I see some positive things, to be honest. At least it attracts some attention. Some of these informal settlements are abandoned. Nobody thinks about them. The level of poverty and the level of deprivation is incredible. So if you can draw some attention towards them, it's fine. But it seems to me that is very superficial, as was mentioned, and it hasn't gone deep enough into the understanding of these places, communities, and try to kind of optimize the what we are doing as a tourist attraction with the life of people. It might be possible. I'm not an expert in this field, but there are ways of really using the methods that I describe with, if you like, more intangible aspects of urbanity to come up with a good solution for complex problems.
Yeah, I think it's clear enough. Thank you, Dr. Kaivan, for the explanations. And let me switch again to Mrs. Vivi Dwi Susanti. There is another question from Nelza from ITN. Previously, if we talk about kampung, it's always related to an organized spatial form. By this recent effort, kampungs try to be organized. Do you think that this trend will be further continued in the future? By having tourism drivers, how actually people have lost their everyday life and common or private life as human beings?
Okay, thank you, Ms. Fairuz Mutia. I'll try to answer from Nessa from ETN. Like I said before in conclusion, that we still can't predict how the strategy will be for resilience because the city always growing or or ongoing process. But with the local value that we have, it will be easier for resilience because it is accordance with everyday life. For example, of Kampung Inggris or English Kampung in Pari Kediri, where more and more people study here, it will attract many investors who will save the prison of local people who have identical with local value. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Vivi. But I have a further questions from Mr. Nelsa's questions. Actually, how kampung needs to be preserved? Can we choose which kind of resiliency to be held in there?
We can choose the strategy for the resilience, but my advice is must use our local value because it must be easier because it's connected with everyday life. So we don't have to make big transformation about our habit. Okay.
Yeah, actually we have our indigenous value to us to be, it's easier to come it solve, right? Okay, this is another questions from Dr. Kaivan from Zuhar Ahmad Zulfikar from UPN Veteran Jawa Timur. Actually, this is really interesting. Dr. Kaivan, is space influx method able to analyze connection between islands? Considering Indonesia is an archipelago country, and many connections between cities uses water transportation between islands.
Yes, an excellent question. Obviously, I have not come across this in my personal research. Most countries in the world are not archipelagos, but I know Indonesia has got, how many islands, by the way, are there? Thousands, right?
Oh, like 17,000.
Oh my God. So that's amazing. And how many of them are occupied? How many of them are
Maybe it's
inhabited?
It's not half, actually.
Half of them almost. Wow, amazing. It's incredible. You know, I realized it's not relevant to this question, but I realized that, you know, there is a big question how we originated from Africa, the human race, and went to other places, and how we got to Australia, for instance, is a big question. But then I realized that they used these archipelagos and jumped from island to island to island, and eventually ended up there. This is incredible in human history. So going back to Zuha's question, which is really interesting, the answer is yes, actually. There are cases, for instance, if you think about Venice, for instance, Venice has got the street structure, which we can normally model, like the methods that I showed you. But there's also this network of canals and boat connections. Now, if you ignore that, you get a totally misleading result in Venice. So what you do, you create a road structure, you create a canal structure, and then connect them together, and then run your analysis. But there's a problem here. The problem is that road structure, the sort of movement and the speed of movement in road structure is very different from the canal structure. So you have to come up with ways of these, for instance, weighted models that I introduced. The integrated models would be very useful. Now, in the case of Indonesia, if you're thinking about the whole country, and I showed you some examples of whole countries like UK or United Arab Emirates, I think you can connect all these islands together as long as there is a boat connection or ship connection between them. The problem is that the speed of this connection is very different from the road structure in each of these islands. So again, you need an integrated urban model that can take into account the different sort of networks. So you have the road network, and you have this, if you like, sea network, and then connect them together and come up with a very good way of weighting them just to get a good idea. And just to elaborate on Zuhair's question, what about these airports and these aerial connections between different places? So if you're looking at a big country like Indonesia or China or United Kingdom, you have also these airports and people travel. Now, the more we have researched, we realize that perhaps for some studies, if you're thinking about a public transport system for an entire country, for instance, that makes sense. If you're looking at a rail network, for instance, in China, it makes sense to look at the entire system. But in most cases, we don't really need to look at the entire country. We need to look at the city or even an area, just a kampung or a village or a district. So there are very sort of rare cases that you want to look at the entire system. But I would love to see a map of Indonesia, a space syntax map of Indonesia with all these connections between these islands. It is possible. Not very easy to do, but it's possible.
Yeah. Maybe Zuhar will be, will be your research, maybe. Yeah? But this is kind
Well, you know what, Zuhair, you can start from a small part of the country. Don't go for 17,000 islands. Start from, say, Java and some islands around it, important ones, which have some cities and some towns and villages and so on, and try to model these different islands separately, then connect them together and see what happens. Yes? And that would be really, really interesting.
I personally think this is a really interesting topics to be having, maybe for Indonesians to developing its own his country actually. Well, I think the time is up. I've already said that the time is very tight today, but I think all of the discussions is really insightful and very informative. Maybe if you, all of you, all the participants want to ask further, you can we just contact your emails or talking about a lot of things, maybe? Okay. Okay, I have to.
So sorry, I didn't. Shall we give you our email addresses, or that's what you asked?
Yeah, maybe maybe some of us already interested into space syntax research and want you to be the co-promoters, maybe. Because
you know what? One of my students is among the organizers of this committee, Adiba.
Yeah.
And she's a very good contact. Why don't you contact Adiba? And through Adiba, you can. I mean, I have to confess that I'm really busy, and it would be impossible for me to answer your inquiries. So I introduced some online resources that you can use. I mean, 90% of your questions will be answered using the resources that I had. But maybe you can create your own network, Indonesian network of researchers who can help each other. And I'm sure Adiba is, or others that I don't know, but there are others that are doing research, and hopefully you can help each other. But if you really need an answer that you can't get anywhere, I'm happy to answer that. And you can easily find me. Just type K1 Karimi UCL and you can find me. It's very easy. In fact, it's k.karimi@ucl.ac.uk.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kaivan. Maybe we can also read your research in online.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, okay. Thank you for the opportunity. So I have to come to the conclusions for these discussions, a very insightful discussions. Today, I should resume. Urban Kampung experience resilience is one of the efforts to be able to show its existence. Urban Kampung that are rich in local values as they turn into thematic kampung have undergone many changes. There are values of struggle to continue or give meaning to life. Meanwhile, space is intrinsic to human activity. We say place. The space is fundamentally a configurational entity. Space syntax is connecting, assessing our movement to be a better configurations and maybe become a sustainable in cities. Well, I should say thank you to all the keynote speakers here. I'm sorry, the time is up, actually. Thank you to all the participants and our insightful keynote speakers. Hopefully these discussions will be beneficial to all of us. And I will give the time again to Master of Ceremony. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good afternoon.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Once again, I would like to say thank you very much to Dr. Khaifan Karimi and also Ms. Bibit Dwi Susanti for giving us such informative and interesting presentation. I would like to also thank Ms. Fairuz for being the moderator of this closing plenary session, as well as the leader of very fruitful discussion. I really enjoyed the discussion with Dr. Khaifan and also Ms. Bibi and also Ms. Fairuz here as the moderator. Also, lastly, I would like to also thank all the participants here for their active participation. Once again, please give a huge round of applause for the speakers, moderator, and all the participants. Ladies and gentlemen, we are arriving to the next very exciting agenda, which is the Best Paper Awards of Architecture and Design International Conference. The awards will be announced directly by the chairman of the conference. To Ms. Adibah Yunisha Nurul, the floor is yours.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Now, perhaps I have to say this by saying thank you for staying with us from early in the morning until this afternoon. Well, in this opportunity, I will be announcing the Best Paper Award of Architecture and Design International Conference 2021. But before I deliver the announcement, please allow me to deliver my greatest gratitude to all the presenters that have contributed to this conference. All papers have provided great research results that I believe provide marvelous insight to the participants today. Nevertheless, due to the nature of an award, unfortunately, we can only declare one paper to be the Best Paper Award on the Architecture and Design International Conference 2021. The Best Paper evaluation is conducted by the Scientific Committee of ADIC 2021. Some of the review points are the novelty of the research, the relevance to the conference topics, the findings that we believe we're going to provide significant contributions for the recovery of the post-pandemic era. And after an extensive paper evaluation, I'm happy to announce the Best Paper Award goes to paper number 31, entitled Identifying Room for Maneuver Towards Community Resilience During the COVID-19 Pandemic, written by Muhammad Nelza Mulki Iqbal and Bayu Teguh Ujianto. Congratulations to Muhammad Nelza Mulki Iqbal and Bayu Teguh Ujianto for being awarded the Best Paper in Architecture and Design International Conference 2021. We are hopeful that you will continue to produce magnificent studies that will provide great contributions to the development of science and technology. Thank you, good afternoon, and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you very much, Ms. Adibah, and also I would like to say congratulations to the winner of the Best Awards paper. Ladies and gentlemen, finally we come to the end of the international conference. We would like to once again say thank you very much to all the speakers for the informative and interesting presentation. We also would like to deliver our biggest appreciation to all the participants for the active participation. Hopefully all the presentation will be beneficial for everybody. Lastly, I am Nafisatul Izzah as the master ceremony of today's international conference, and also on behalf of the organizing committee, beg your pardon of the shortcomings or mistakes we have made. Thank you and see you on Architecture and Design International Conference 2022. Good afternoon and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.